these are guys who longed for their father's love and could never get it. There was always that special boy. He was the one who had it. That's painful. That's a shaping influence. Some of you have had experiences with a parent like that, when you knew they loved one of your siblings better than you. Not only that, but think about Benjamin and Joseph, the two youngest, the only two sons of Rachel. Rachel died giving birth to Benjamin. So not only were they the younger and treated very differently, but they had just lost their mom. And as we'll see as the story unfolds, Jacob will ultimately be much more protective of Benjamin, coddling him in a way that had to affect him negatively. If you're familiar with this, psychologists, students of religion, students of human behavior have a field day with these stories, and they've been doing it for centuries. The 20th century Swiss psychologist Carl Jung made all of these archetypes out of the characters in the book of Genesis. Jordan Peterson, a Jungian psychologist, does that still today. Pete Scazzero, some of you have actually been through our Emotionally Healthy Spirituality or Emotionally Healthy Relationships course. Pete Scazzero draws on the work of a psychologist named Murray Bowen in Family Systems Theory, who points out all of the ways that what we're reading here is still happening in families today. Scazzero likes to say, Jesus may be in your heart, but grandpa's in your bones. Family patterns tend to repeat themselves. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I think sibling rivalry seems like a good idea. I think we should all just compete with each other and hate each other, like our fathers did. But we end up doing it anyway. What's the first rule of being in a hole? Stop digging. What are the people doing in this story? Dig, dig, dig. So on one hand, this is clearly saying human beings are responsible for their actions, but on the other hand, there is at least one hint in the story so far that something more is going on. When Jacob corrects Joseph for telling this dream, it says, but he kept the saying in mind. In other words, Jacob knew from his own experience that God is often up to much more than his own decisions in his life. He thought to himself, Some of you read a classic book by a guy named Gary Friesen, Decision Making in the Will of God. Friesen said this, what we want when we're trying to make a decision in life is we want to see God's finger pointing exactly to the thing we're supposed to do. Go do that. This is what we get is God's fingerprints. God's fingerprints are far more subtle. And they're suggesting not just that God wants us to end up in the right place, but that he's up to something far bigger than the decisions that we make. In fact, there is a next fingerprint in this story, and I'll summarize this next section. But basically, Jacob says the 10 older brothers are out shepherding sheep, and they've gone to a place called Shechem, where they had massacred this whole family. And they're shepherding their sheep, and Jacob says to Joseph, go check on your brothers, and then bring back a report, tell me how they're doing. So Joseph, 17 years old, travels this 50-mile journey, probably at least 4 days to get there, and they're not there. But as he's wandering around in the field, somehow randomly, he comes across the one guy who happened to be nearby when they said, we're going to keep moving and going on to Dothan. So he goes to Dothan. He never should have found them, but he did. This is the moment in the story where you're thinking to yourself, boy, if the blade had just been a quarter of an inch over, if I just stepped out of the house 30 seconds later, this wouldn't have happened. But everything lined up for exactly the next thing to happen. Let's turn to verse 18 and continue to read. They saw him. Nope. Almost there. I'll go ahead and start reading. We'll get into it. They saw him from afar. And before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we'll say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, remember the firstborn, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand. and restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore. Then they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, Judah's number 4, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites," another word for the Midianites, same basic people, "and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then these Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without a doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol, the grave, to my son, mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. This is dark, y'all, and I don't know any other way to say it except to tell you exactly how dark it is. Let me show you. Getting 10 brothers to agree on anything has got to be incredibly impossible, right? Getting 3 brothers to agree on anything, but all 10 of them, as soon as they see Joseph, they're all on the same page. We're going to kill him. Now, Reuben, the firstborn, is the first one to say, no. Don't kill him. Throw him in the pit, and presumably we're just going to let him die of natural causes. Somehow that will be less guilty than if we'd taken his life ourselves. Now, of course, Reuben planned to come back and rescue him later, but Reuben, you might remember, probably has an ulterior motive. He had slept with Bilhah, his father's concubine, 2 of his brother's mom, and surely Dad was not happy about it. Maybe he thought if everybody else tried to harm their brother and he rescued him, maybe Dad would finally love him. So they agree to this. They're like, yeah, let's just let him die of natural causes. But what's the first thing they do? Did you notice this? Before they throw him in the pit, they strip him of the robe. That hated robe, that physical thing that reminded them every day that Daddy loves them and not us. Then they throw him into this pit. Now, you think of a pit as just sort of a hole in the ground, but the word here means cistern. And in the ancient world, in arid climates like this, the only way to survive really dry seasons is when it's raining, you find a way to store up water. So a cistern was kind of this sort of jug-shaped hole in the ground, sometimes lined with plaster, probably 15, 20 feet deep, and with a small opening and a lid on it. This is where they threw Joseph. Imagine what it's like to be in a pit like that. If the cover's over the pit, you at least see some kind of light coming in. And gravity is holding you at the bottom, and it's not that far to go to get out, but the walls are closing in on you. There's no traction. You know that somebody could very easily throw you a rope or reach a hand down and pull you out, but you're utterly helpless. And then there's this chilling detail. While he's down in this pit, it says, they sat down to eat. I remember, years and years ago, watching a gangster movie called Goodfellas. I'm not recommending these movies, by the way, but there's a scene in Goodfellas. It's all based on a true story where 3 of these mafia gangsters have abducted this guy that they're going to kill and bury him, but they realize, well, we need a shovel. So they stop by one of the guy's mother's house in the middle of the night, and she wakes up and she cooks them this big meal, and they're laughing and having a great time while this guy they're about to kill is in the trunk of the car. These guys are mobsters. Later on in Genesis chapter 42, they say to each other, we remember the distress of his soul, how he cried out and he pleaded with us to let him out, but we didn't. So then Judah, fourth born, he's got an even better idea. Judah says, no, wait a minute. We can actually make some money on this deal. Not only will we avoid personally killing him, we won't take anybody's life, but we'll make a profit. And he even adds a reason to it. I mean, after all, he's our own brother, our flesh and blood, as if somehow that makes this a better suggestion. And this is where God drops another little fingerprint in the story. It's right at this moment that these Ishmaelite or Midianite traders just happen to pass by out in the open. So they sell him. 20 shekels of silver, standard price for a slave in the ancient world, 2 shekels each. Not a massive sum of money, maybe enough for each of them to buy a special robe of their own. And then they kill a goat, and they dip the goat in blood, and they take the coat, or they dip the coat in blood, and they take it to their father. And do you notice how they said it? Please identify this. Is this your son's robe? It's the same way that the older brother in Jesus' parable of the prodigal sons comes to the father and says, I've done everything right, but this son of yours comes home. And this is what you do with him? Not only that, but it's the same way that Esau had tricked his own father Isaac years before. Do you remember what he did? Jacob had tricked his own father. Isaac loved Esau, and so Jacob and his mom conspired together, kill a goat. Take the goat skins, put them on your arms. Your dad can't see well, pretend to be Esau, and you will get the firstborn blessing. So Jacob assumes that Joseph has been torn to pieces, exactly what they wanted him to believe. He's tricked. So he tears his own garments, and he puts sackcloth on. And you've got to think Jacob, on some level, maybe blames himself for sending this teenager out 60-some miles away to check on his brothers. Do you notice this detail too? It's that all of his sons and all of his daughters tried to comfort him. Think about how sinister that is. You know the story, there's 2 levels of deception. One level of deception is somebody who steals your money. The deepest level is they steal your money and they help you look for it. Oh, Jacob,